Welcome to episode 2 from the Canadian Securities Exchange, high atop the Toronto skyline. And I'm here today with David Côté from Northern Helm. We're going to talk about his operation now, but also his perspective, having seen early days of legalization here in Canada, and now what he's seeing both from a retail perspective, a market perspective, and what has changed, what has stayed the same, what he and the industry got right and wrong over time. David, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you, and I want to get a bit of your background, but I want to get it in the context of a question.
Okay.
You and I have talked many, many times before.
I'm very lucky for that.
So am I. I'm much smarter for it. I was telling you all the things that I've learned, but two sort of historical points that I think are important. One, you used to work for Tim Hortons and for Canopy Growth, two great Canadian brands, let's say. One of the really interesting things I learned from you the first time we chatted, I asked what the difference between those two things. You talked about retail rhythms and times of day and mindset of consumers. Talk a little bit about that, because I do think it's almost foundational to how we think about cannabis sales on the retail level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think whatever your retail is, you have to understand what your customer is going to be feeling or what they're going to be doing after and before coming into your location. So with the 7 a.m., you better be as fast as possible to get that coffee. You're likely the first coffee of their day or the second one, and you happen to be between them and getting to work, them and getting their kids to school. You're a service, and it needs to be very, very fast. Whereas on the cannabis side, you tend to be going in with the mindset of you're purchasing the thing that you've been looking forward to all day. And not necessarily the product, but the thing you're going to be doing, whether that's spending time with friends, with family, watching TV, just having some time to yourself. The product that is being purchased tends to be for that day part. So that really changes how people come into the store. What has been interesting over the number of years, and I think that's something that we've been getting better at understanding with normalization, is the products that are being sold in cannabis retail stores have become just like grocery, in that there's fewer and fewer percentage of new products coming onto market. It's like we're not getting a new category every month. We're not getting bananas all of a sudden. The grocery store, you have a good sense of what you're going in for, and you get the products that you want, and you move on. People still enjoy coming in to have that in-store experience, and we're very lucky that we've got a lot of people that they come to Northern Helm and they expect the same people to be working there, and we've got people that are hitting their 5-year anniversary this week, which is awesome because stores only opened almost 5 years ago. So that is part of the experience, but they also want to be quick. They know what they're looking for. There's a quick high, maybe is there anything new, but actually I'm getting the same thing that I got last week and continuing on my day. So that time of transaction has amazingly become very similar for many people between a Tim Hortons trip and the cannabis store.
It is interesting to see how it evolved. And I remember even early days talking to you about general lack of data, right?
Yes.
Like we didn't know what people were going to buy, how long they were going to stay, what time of day they were going to come in. But you have learned a ton of that. But
I think we've all learned a few things.
Yeah, I think we've all learned a lot of things. But talk about Northern Helm's footprint and the model, because in the first episode, when we were at the Canadian Securities Exchange, we talked to Zachary George from SNDL, which is a bigger model with lots of different sort of operations, both from alcohol and cannabis, and even in cannabis, different models of how their retail operates, from value buds to spirit leaf. But give us a little bit of your footprint and how those retail footprint operate. Like, what is the model? Is it franchise? Is it owner operated? Like, what does the model look like today?
For sure, and actually listening to how Zach was talking about getting into retail, their first foray into retail was through franchising with the Spirit Leaf model, and he had something along the lines of, we wouldn't have been in retail today had we not been able to make that first step. We wouldn't have value buds if we hadn't taken that first step with franchising. And given my background in franchising and also the capital that's available, every store has a cost, and the local knowledge that is so important with a franchise or license model. Licensing is franchising without the same clause. It's a more balanced relationship. Mm-hmm. So we went out with a license model to allow for local operators that knew the market to open those stores. And yeah, they get what they get is our operating model. They get their branding and they get the network support right away. So they're opening one store, but they're getting the benefit of the rest of the market there. But then by the same token, as we're working along, there are some operators that they have made their money. They've experienced what they wanted to experience, and we know the market really well. We've learned it from them. Mm-hmm. So we've been in a position where we've been purchasing back some of our licensed stores. So now we have a split of 4 corporate stores and 2 licensed stores.
And geographically, for those people in Toronto or the GTA, give us a picture of the footprint.
2 in East Toronto, and then 3 in the Durham region, so the Oshawa, Bowmanville, Curtis, and 1 in Kingston.
Okay.
We've had other stores in the past. So with Northern Helm, we also had Jay Supply Co. in the past, under one umbrella. So there was the original in London that was actually part of the first lottery store. But lotteries, there was a first and second lottery. There were good things and bad things about the lottery. We don't need to say anything about it now. But that changed, and we made the decision to get out of those. Thunder Bay stores have made it difficult for us to do a really good job serving those customers. The team there was phenomenal, and the whole town was amazing. But we looked at it, and it was like we're either investing in opening up a whole bunch of new stores in Thunder Bay, so that we can have a lot of corporate support there, or we should sell these to somebody that can do a really good job there. And ultimately, that was the decision.
And so you have that footprint. And I want to ask you, because people may be watching this who follow Cultivated and follow the Canadian Securities Exchange, that don't understand necessarily the model of what happens in Ontario in particular, where we have a provincial wholesaler, and they have a little bit of an e-com presence too, but a provincial wholesaler, and they sell to you, but they also sell to everybody else basically at the same price as they're selling to you.
At the same price.
And so at the same price, yes. What does that do from your perspective? Like, what things do you have to do from a Northern Helm perspective with your team, with your footprint, with your stores to maximize on that? Because everybody's got the same products.
Everybody's got the same products. That's a double-edged sword. So there is a huge benefit to having one supplier, and that supplier is delivering once a week. And if you look at any other retail, if you look at grocery retail where I started my career, they're having deliveries all times a day, 7 days a week, and they're trying to manage where those products are coming. We have one delivery once a week. So there's a cost and a benefit there. Certainly, yes, the OCS gets a margin, but we're paying that margin so that we're having a single point of distribution. But there's often the concern like, oh, well, if Value Buds, as an example, is able to order the exact same products as you, how can you compete that way? Right. Well, at any given time, there's over 4,000 products available on the OCS. At one point, it was up to 5,000 with flow through. We have the opportunity to differentiate ourselves with the products that we're bringing in, and we need to do a really good job of understanding what the market is looking for and understanding who is offering what in the market and what our customers have actually been purchasing from us, and take that feedback and adjust as necessary. Because if we're putting out the exact same menu as every other store on the block, the only thing that we're able to differentiate on is our location and our people, which I like both of those.
Right.
But we should also be doing a good job of curating a slightly different menu to meet the guests that are coming in.
And thinking about that menu, think about the data that comes out of your point of sale and sort of more subjective stuff on the ground. What does it look like from one store to the other in terms of inventory, in terms of price points? Like, how different is it from one Northern Helm to the next? Or is it like sort of cut and paste one-to-one?
It's not cut and paste because different neighborhoods are different. Like even in the Durham region where we've got stores in Bowmanville, Curtis, and Oshawa, pretty small diameter if you circle the 3 of them. What a customer is looking for in our Oshawa location tends to be very different than what a customer is looking for in our Bowmanville location. The positive for us is that we can bring products into all 3, and if something's selling really well in Oshawa, we move from Bowmanville to Curtis into that Oshawa location. And we're lucky. We spend a lot of time focusing on that, and our team is phenomenal at noting if a product is just not moving, or hey guys, this is moving really well here, and for these reasons, you should try that. And that transfer of knowledge has been really important to allow us to compete with players that have much bigger bank accounts than us.
Yeah, we can talk about that. But everything you just said is based on being in operation, running retail, understanding your consumers, understanding the location. None of that existed when you got into the industry, right? It was all a blank and blind slate, right?
Ironically, retail is just retail, though.
Right, that's part of it too. And with the lottery here in Ontario, with other markets where we've seen in New York, and in a lot of markets, they want to favor small operators. Love that idea. Unlike running a Tim Hortons, what are the barriers to entry that Tim Hortons doesn't have that sort of Cannabis does? And how does that sort of change the operation?
Barriers to entry, so if a Tim Hortons franchisee wanted to go in somewhere, well, banking for one, and based on Cultivated's newsletter this morning, there are some issues there. Yeah. So that's a big thing. So access to capital is huge, and I think that that is, and to tie back what Zach said last week or last month, where we're kind of in a 6-year bear market.
Right.
And 6 years is a long time to have constrained capital in a market. So we have to be cash flow positive to continue operating. And certainly to grow, you need that available to you. So those barriers to entry, when you've got limited ability for banking, like we've been with Alterna the whole time, they've been great, but there are very few other options in banking.
And can I just pause on that for a second? Like, it's legal in Canada, federally legal, and you've been with the same bank, and a lot of other people have been too.
Yes.
And it's cash constrained, and like you need to be cash flow positive to actually run a business. Like it's not like a Tim Hortons. You could I don't know. You tell me. Like, you can open a Tim Hortons.
You can open a Tim Hortons if you have the means to show. And I've been there for a long time, so I want to be clear.
It's an expensive franchise, but it is.
Yeah, if you have the means to do it, there is the support network around, and here's the bank, here's the insurance, here's the real estate support, because the landlords all really like dealing with us because there's a benefit. And we have great relationships with our landlords, but that takes time to build, and we have a good relationship with all of our vendors right now. We pay our bills. That's helpful, and we've been working for it for a long time. But this is a market where it's not as though there's credit for purchasing inventory. And when the inventory is loaded on the truck, the money is debited from our account. So in Kingston, when a delivery ships on Tuesday night, it's pulled from our account on Tuesday night, it arrives on Wednesday. There aren't many industries that have negative terms.
Right.
So that's just something that we certainly deal with that other industries don't. But I don't want to sit here and say that it's better or worse. It's different. Right. We all knew the game when we got into it, and we have to deal with it.
Yeah. Press rewind for a second. You're sitting in 2018, 2019. I think you were at Canopy at the time. Like, what do you think you and the industry got right or wrong that you would have changed immediately if you could rewind now? Is it about in Ontario, even for those that the historical perspective, had a, let's call it like an LCBO model, so a sort of provincially run cannabis model initially. Mm-hmm. There was an election midway through legalization that shifted to sort of a private model with a provincial wholesaler. So that's not your fault, unless you had something to do with the election. I don't know. No. But talk a little bit about that. Like, what were you planning for that you thought absolutely was going to happen but didn't, or didn't know was going to happen but did?
There were a litany of things. So that was a wild time, because I was Tokyo Smoke at that point, and that change was announced before Canopy had even purchased Tokyo Smoke.
Right.
So that summer we were prepping.
It was just a coffee shop at the time.
We were prepping for our Winnipeg store openings, and we found out that spring, right around the same time, that we would be 10/17 was going to be the day. So we were targeting that time, and then midway through the planning of that, we got purchased by Canopy. So now everybody, it's hair on fire. You've got Tweed and Tokyo Smoke, and two of the locations were
right next to, of course,
20 feet apart.
Right.
Like the truck backed up and could drop to both locations. It was wild. But if you, at that time, and I think we spoke about it, it's like we didn't know what traffic was going to be like. We didn't know how people were going to shop. We had no idea what products were actually going to be in market.
Right.
And the security standards, the expectations were that these things needed to be safer than banks, and they're very secure now, but they're not quite Fort Knox. And there's a lot of inefficiencies that happen when you don't know, because you need to cover off a lot of bases that just unknowns along the way. But I think probably the biggest thing looking back now is we expected that people would spend 15 minutes on every transaction. And to that point I made earlier, there's a lot of regulars now that want to be in and out in 90 seconds as if they're buying bananas, as if they're buying a coffee. And that's not that they're being rude or don't want to talk. This is part of their normal transaction throughout the week. So I think a lot of it would have been a slightly smaller footprint and really focus on that quick transaction, because with the Tokyo Smokes back then, and then with Tweed, they were beautiful, and they still are beautiful locations. But I think we would have had flagship spots and then a whole bunch of smaller express stores that fit more with the grocery shopping patterns.
There was no way to know.
There
was no data. And I think we've talked about this before, where LCBO, our sort of alcohol sales in Ontario, like they have, 50 years of data. They probably know, not to the penny, but certainly the day of the year, day of the week, day of the month, how much they're likely to sell and sort of what that means to them.
Yes.
Notwithstanding the fact that they don't have U.S. beverages in them still this year yet.
That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole different thing here in Canada right
Next
now.
podcast.
Yeah, right. We'll talk about that. I want to ask about, you just talked about some stores that you've sold since you've operated, right? In North Bay, is that what you said?
Thunder Bay.
Thunder Bay. Talk about what makes sense from an operator perspective when you're looking at your store footprint now. Like, what does a P&L look like per store that says this makes good sense, this doesn't make sense? And you don't need to get sort of in specifics, but like, what are you looking at? Is it month over month revenue? Is it day of the year? Like, what does it look like in terms of how you evaluate the success of a store or the whole operation?
In many ways, we have to look at it holistically because of how the different stores fit together. So, like we were talking, within the Durham region, being able to move the product, within the Toronto region, being able to move product between the stores to match what customers are looking for, because there's only so many dollars that can go into inventory. Again, we don't have debt financing for working capital. That's just not a thing. So, taking a step back and being pragmatic about what do we have available to us and what do we not, and we can say, oh, well, it's too bad that we don't have a bank line that we can do this, or that we have to order everything from the OCS. It's like that's the reality that we're operating in. So let's do a really good job of focusing there. I think you're asking kind of on the P&L side of things. We spend a lot of time looking at the labor that we have in stores, focus mostly on who are the right people to do a good job serving the guests that are coming in on a daily basis. Like that's gone a long way, and it is amazing how when you compensate better talent, the customer experience ends up being better, and that's a really, really hard thing to
It's an investment. Yeah,
it's an investment, but I think we've been lucky to run into some fantastic people that want to be a part of our organization, and then do our very best to continue elevating them, because ultimately that's the point of contact. This is what the human experience. AI can be everything, but that human experience in store goes a long way.
even for those quick purchases.
Yeah, even for the quick purchases.
Yeah,
When somebody knows your name when you walk in, you feel special.
yeah.
And in the Curtis store on Tuesday, and I was sitting there just behind the wall on my laptop, listening to transaction after transaction where the customers knew the team member's name and vice versa as they walked through the door. And it's just like, it felt like a coffee shop. It felt like everybody knew your name.
And they are, I mean, you could have a massive footprint, and there are retail operations that have massive footprints here in Canada. There's a couple that have over 200, I think.
Yeah.
Like Value Buds, and I think Canna Cabana has more than 200 now. But it still is a local purchase.
Yep. And that's not to say that those groups aren't doing a great job
No,
in the
yeah,
individual
right.
locations too. Like, that's just it. But it is doing that really, really well. And we can say, oh, well, what should the average store be versus the rent? It's like, it all comes down to there are margins in the industry that those vary a little bit by market, and depending what people are into, every product is slightly different. So the rent and the labor have to fit the market that you're serving.
Right. I want to ask you, we talked a lot about looking back. I want you to look forward and imagine yourself around this table. There's someone from the AGCO, maybe the Ontario Cannabis Store, maybe Health Canada. Like, I will preface this by saying a year after legalization, we were sitting in a room with federal elected officials. There was a whole cannabis group there. And they were saying, we need this taxation to come down. We need these labels to be like this. And the staffer I was sitting next to said, you know what you sound like now? And I was like, what? I said, like every other industry.
Yeah.
Right, complaining about these things, which in some respects is great. Like, it's an industry, there are businesses, some of them are thriving, some of them are, it's like, what are the things you think that there could be tweaks or wholesale changes in Canada, maybe specifically in Ontario, maybe specifically in Toronto, that would make it a little bit easier to operate? Or a lot easier to operate, I guess, yeah.
I want to be careful on here because I'm not a regulatory person, and I'm certainly not the smartest person in this room or in any cannabis room. So I can have my opinions, but ultimately I need to do a good job operating within the regulations that are set out. I'd probably just ask questions because ultimately there are three pillars for legalization, and you touched on them earlier. It's having safe access, so making sure nobody that is underage has access to it, ensuring that those products meet food safety requirements, which that's a whole other thing that we really need to be promoting a lot. And then ultimately, our tax dollars going into coffers because products are being sold, and that was being missed. So if those were the three pillars, I think we as operators have proven ourselves over the last couple of years that we do a pretty good job on the first two. The products continue getting better. The safety in store and where we are locating the stores within the regulations I think that's gone pretty well. And the tax dollars are certainly coming in. If we look at Ontario, I think the last budget is $645 million between profit from the OCS and excise dollars. And that's before you factor in the HST benefit that is coming through. So there's a lot of dollars coming through there. But ironically, they're saying that that's only 70% of the market.
Right.
So they're theoretically, there's another $1 billion at retail of sales that could be going through the Ontario stores if it was maxed out. So I'm not great at math, but that's a few $100 million of extra tax dollars that could go, the profit that could go in before HST, because 130 million of HST on there is being missed too. So if that was something that was important, it's like, okay, well there might be a way to look at those illicit stores and how do you attack those even more. So that's on.
And just by frame of reference, even on the way here, I think I went by 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Full storefronts operating 24 hours a day.
And they tend to locate themselves inside the 150 meters to schools that we have to stay outside of, because that way the real estate's cheaper.
Right.
So there might be an enforcement angle, and then on the others, but going back to what we as operators have proven that we're doing a pretty decent job at, is allowing us to do bundles in the same way that grocery would, or alcohol would, or coffee would, as long as it meets the requirements that of those first two pillars. Because without the bundling, consumers don't understand why bundles can't happen.
Right.
So that could be another step in normalization. But I'm certainly not sitting here complaining about anything as it is. I've been very fortunate to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, and you obviously you're a real operator, and the industry, as you were saying, it's not new here in Canada, and the companies that are operating are really good companies for the most part. Like, do you think that often gets missed sort of in the broader sort of capital markets conversation? That's like, if the operators are still in business now, and they've been operating for, I don't know, 6 to 10 years, like they've actually maybe not have it figured out totally, but they are operating in a compliant way. They're making important deals. They're understanding the consumers better. They're increasing or maximizing their retail footprint. Like, it seems to me that that's where the industry is here in Canada right now.
I'm biased, but I think so.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I believe that is the case. It's any retail is difficult, and people that have stuck it out for 5 to 8 years, whatever you're selling, but in this market in particular, it's a lot of lessons.
There's a lot of lessons, and I just think from my personal sort of cannabis buying experience, the experience is better. There are way more products on the shelves, and what is available in my neighborhood may not be the same thing that's available in Northern Helm and East End, but like similar type neighborhoods. Good. It is very varied, and while there aren't new form factors, there are often new products or brands that are interesting and intriguing. And I think the other part of what I want to ask you about is, then there are brands that seem to just be juggernauts on the shelves that people come in asking for. And one of them was from SNDL, certainly Pearls is owned by them now, but like, do you see that as well, that no matter where the store is, no matter what the sort of profile of the consumer at that store is, it's like that thing sells?
There's certainly some products that are starting to bubble up, and I think that is an indication of the maturity that we're in, where people are walking in asking, and we'll use Pearls as the example, asking for Pearls when they come in. There are certainly products that are like that. That does vary by store, but there are definitely people that have become brand associated, brand affiliated, and vice versa. People are really starting to have a sense of what brands they want to be associated with and what brands they don't want to be associated with. I think that's amazing. That means that we're getting there. That means that there's been some consistency in the product, and that means that consumers are starting to make decisions for themselves, and that's only going to help with the next set of product iterations. Yeah,
it's just amazing that it's all been done without, any marketing, really. I mean, any like traditional...
Pretty limited marketing.
Right, out-of-home sort of marketing. And even digital, it's concentrated. David, this has been awesome. It's always awesome to talk to you, sort of to get a lay of the land of what's happening, both with your operation, but also to zoom out and sort of understand what's happening in the broader landscape. So thank you for being here. I mean, it's a pretty good view.
Yeah, it's not bad.
It's as good as it gets. David, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
This has been episode 2 from our Cultivated episodes here at the Canadian Securities Exchange, high atop the Toronto skyline. We'll be back again next month talking about the cannabis industry, talking about capital markets. Be sure to find us at cultivated.news and on LinkedIn and on YouTube. Thank you to everybody here at the Canadian Securities Exchange, and we'll be back again next month.